All right, hello everyone, and welcome to App Store Optimization. Get your app noticed, a Skillshare class by Tyler York. This is part 5, Getting Featured, or as they say, the holy grail of app discovery. So, getting featured is going to vary for each store, but I kind of ask the same fundamental question for each store. Um, and I should start with the disclaimer that obviously, like, none of this is going to guarantee that you get featured because it's pretty much entirely up to the review staff at that company. These are just tips and suggestions to make your app more appealing to those people. And if you do ever somehow get a contact with one of those guys, make sure you're very nice to them. But up until that point, most people ask, how do I get in the door? So when approaching an app store, I always try to ask the question, how can I think like Apple? How does my app align with their vision and their goals for their app store? Um, and so for Apple, to me, it's really the sort of the five things I think are really important. The app is beautiful, so it's artistically or aesthetically pleasing. It's also well designed. That's very important to the Apple mantra. It's innovative, so it's doing something different. If you're the 10th check-in app, they're not going to feature you, no matter how nice it looks. It uses Apple functionality, so this one is kind of contested, but it's a pretty safe bet that if you use Game Center for your matchmaking, or if you use their camera in a unique or interesting way, like Instagram did, you're making their product offering better. Um, and so things that use Apple functionality usually have a better chance than those that do not. You shouldn't force it, but if possible, I would try and use whatever makes sense. If it's popular, so if it's already popular, whether sort of online in sort of the blogosphere, those people that work at Apple and the review sites, they read the same blogs that consumers read and sort of the industry reads. So blogs like Touch Arcade and things like that can be very helpful for getting in front of the Apple review team. Um, and if your game is already popular, then they're going to notice that too because it's going to be high on the charts. But the last bullet point here is I think the one that's most often kind of overlooked, which is that it monetizes. So um, it's really important that, I mean, you remember that Apple is a business, right? And the people that work there do, like, they don't necessarily have hard financial targets that they need to hit, but they have some idea of what apps make money and what apps don't. So if your app monetizes well, that's going to increase its chances. It's not a prerequisite by any means, but it's definitely going to make them more likely to give your app solid placement. So I think that it's always important to remember that. I think you can apply sort of that one to all of them, like to Google Play and to Amazon, but the app should make them money. Like, they're using their promotion space for you, so they want their 30%, as they say. Getting featured on Android. So, like I said before, you need to think like the company. So, for Google, what are Google's vision and goals with their App Store? And actually, one of the first things that they recommend you do is that you make sure your app follows their best practices. So they have this online. I'll try and dig up the link for you guys. But basically, it covers a lot of things that a good app on Android does. And I think that all the things that we talked about with Apple still apply here. Things like, like, it needs to be beautiful and innovative and use the device well. All of those things are always true. But I think on Android, they're much more interested in sort of it being well built. Because they have a ton of devices, if the app is consistent across devices, that's very helpful. Um, Localized or language agnostic content. So, for instance, like this Avengers live wallpaper, you can not speak English and still get a pretty good idea of what this thing does. Or Angry Birds, you don't need to speak any language to understand how Angry Birds works. I don't even think they use words in the game. So, it's very much. it's very much helpful if you have sort of a language agnostic app, which you sometimes you just don't, and that's fine too. And then unique to Android is a bonus. So you'll notice if you look at like Flood, and you look at the Task Manager and the Avengers Live wallpaper, the Task app and the Flood app are all unique to Android. And clearly, since they're competing with the Apple App Store, they want to emphasize apps that use their technology, and that focus on Android. And then the last tip I have for Android that's pretty helpful is submit to something called Friday Review. So I'll add the link in the resources section for this part of the course. But basically, Friday Review is where the Google Developer Relations team will actually sit down with a bunch of apps that have been recommended to them or submitted, and go through them on a Google Hangout and see which ones they think are cool. Which I think is a pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting system. It gives you the ability to kind of see their thought process, and it also gives you a way to submit your app to be featured, which Apple doesn't have. So it's pretty cool stuff. You should definitely do that if you're thinking about Android. And then Amazon. So I think that with Amazon, you just want to, their goals are obviously similar to Apple's and similar to Android's, but what are their unique goals for their platform? So one of the things that I think Amazon focuses on quite a bit is it a deal? If you look on the right side, you'll notice that the free app of the day is, has better featured placement than the actual featured app. So that just gives you an idea of sort of how Amazon's trying to provide value for their customers. Um, and then also Amazon is like it's very ratings based. Like they're all about the star rating, and so their customers really love it. Or customers loving apps is going to be really sort of a key selling point for featuring it as well. And then the quality obviously has to be very high. I think that high quality means more so that it looks good. Doesn't necessarily have to be like stunningly beautiful, but it looks good. It's functional. It works. It doesn't break. Um, and lastly is optimized for tablets. So the Kindle Fire is their flagship device. So if your app is tablet optimized or tablet focused, like you'll notice up here, that Flipboard is their featured app of the day. And that's because they're going to really promote tablet content pretty heavily. All right, and if you have any questions, please use the discussion section. There's a discussion topic for each of the parts 1 through 5 of this course. And then I'll be checking that. I'll also be checking just the separate threads if you decide to create them. And you can always email me. You can reach out to me at about.me/gty, and I'll also be available on Skillshare pretty regularly. So whatever way you want to get in touch with me, I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks so much.